You only live twice. This is our second attempt at this, because some dickhead wasn't recording.
So sorry.
You only record fucking twice.
The 5th James Bond film.
The 5th official one, the 5th Eon one.
Personally, I think this is a great Bond film.
One of those ones I really loved as a kid. I don't think it's ever going to be up in the pantheon of the great ones. It's silly, it's fun, but I like it.
They've gone for the idea that this is an epic Bond. This could be Connery's last. It probably is. He doesn't like us anymore and he finds the whole thing embarrassing.
And you can tell.
It was once an underground outlet for the lava from the volcano.
Outlet for the lava? It's like he half flubbed that line and they just couldn't be bothered to redo it.
He couldn't be bothered to redo it.
Yeah.
We're going to end this on a big scale. Bond dies. Bond gets married. Bond finally meets Blofeld. And there's space, there's action, it's an epic Bond movie. I think they pull it off. We did the drinking game to this. I won't explain the rules. The rules will be down below.
This was 129 drinks. And I want to say that we were probably about 75 drinks up until the last 18 minutes of the movie.
The explosions killed us and Bond killing people, but it was mainly the fact that the ninjas had grenades.
There were some shots where there were just 3 or 4 explosions happening at the same time, and it was really difficult to keep up with. So the plot is, it begins an American spaceship, because I guess this is 1967, so we're in the real sort of thick of the space race. It begins in an American spaceship is consumed by another mysterious spaceship. And in the process, one of the astronauts is killed, is sort of cut loose into space. And it creates this big diplomatic incident because the Americans blame the Soviets because I guess it's the height of the Cold War. And it's not, it's Spectre, the British intelligence services, who've got no dog in this fight whatsoever, get involved and send Bond in even though they don't need to.
But because he's so fucking famous now, he has to fake his death in order to go back undercover. So hence the title, You Only Live Twice, they fake his death.
I'll be sorry to go.
He'd have wanted it this way.
He wanted to be shot multiple times in a bed.
Upside down in a bed.
The James Bond is Dead opening, which they've done in From Russia with Love, Thunderball, and now this.
How stupid do they think cinema goers are? What?
We're too late.
What do you mean he's dead? No! It shot him a long way, didn't it? Where is he now? Shot him all the way to Japan. You've got Dr. No with the first Connery Bond, and it does feel like a bookending and a very similar feel. You have 2 movies where you have the relatively sedate, sensible first half of the movie where the work of the spy happens. Bond finding out information. Bond going undercover. And then you have the second half of the movie where it becomes this mad adventure movie. Bond in a helicopter, a gyrocopter attacking a volcano base.
Bon appetit.
Lewis Gilbert is the director of this film. It's his first Bond film. He would go on to direct The Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker. And what's fascinating is that The Spy Who Loved Me is basically the same film but in the ocean rather than space. But I think he does a good job here. I think the direction in this is great. And I think the epic quality of the movie is throughout. It feels like a bigger movie to me than the 4 Bonds that have come before. It was written by Roald Dahl, and this is the first Bond film where they have completely ignored the novel. The first bit of the novel is James Bond explaining the rules to rock, paper, scissors and talking about his theory about how he was going to win.
I've got you, Bondo-san. You can't escape. Good show, said Bond, trying to clear his mind of the suspicion that Tiger would keep to the stone, or alternatively that Tiger would expect him to play it that way, expect Bond to play the paper and himself riposte with the scissors to cut the paper, and so on and so forth.
And there's a whole bit with a Japanese garden which is poisonous, and Blofeld's in a samurai outfit. I think there's like a volcano seat that James Bond sits on and it shoots lava in his arse. I might have invented that myself. I don't remember. I read it when I was a kid.
It sounds like a toilet I used in Korea.
I love the spray up the arse in toilets in Asia. I think they're great.
For another video, but yeah, I agree.
Stay tuned for our review of toilets in Asia. They needed to do something completely different. So Roald Dahl came in and wrote this space heist. And I think he did a really good job on the whole. One of the reasons why this film is so successful is Ken Adam. Ken Adams' set design is absolutely astonishing.
When you get the Blofeld's lair at the end, the hollowed out volcano with a monorail and a helicopter pad in it, where do you go from there? That's, it's like they said, Ken, go nuts, just go for it, absolutely go wild. It's incredible.
And no James Bond villain Leia has ever lived up to that. Chubby Broccoli and Harry S. Saltzman, they completely put their money in the right place by saying, this deserves $1 million to build a set. And Ken Adams, not only this set, there's a lot of sets that are brilliant in this movie. And they have you can see his 60s, Dr. Strangelove vibe in them.
So Chubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman went to Japan to sort of scout locations in pre-production. And they apparently had booked to fly out of Japan, on whatever evening, a Thursday evening or something. And at the 11th hour, they were invited to come and look at a ninja school. And they thought, well, okay, fine, that's exciting, let's have a look at this. And they went to look at this ninja school, and not only was a thing they were inspired to put in the movie, but also it meant that they changed their flights. And apparently, their initial flight that they had been booked on crashed, and unfortunately everyone was killed. Every passenger died. So, but for the, for a very last minute rebooking of a flight, that could have been it. That could have been finito for the Bond movies.
The other behind the scenes person who I think adds a tremendous amount to this film is John Barry. We've said before how wonderful he is as a composer. I think this is one of his best scores ever. A lot of recent Bond scores are great, but they're kind of trying to playing off previous Bond scores. There's something about You Only Live Twice is completely unique. And again, it's just John Barry, how much he gave to this franchise.
The song performed by Nancy Sinatra is one of my favourite theme songs. It's fairly sedate and it works in those more quiet moments in the movie where you have to have more of an emotional kick. We would say similarly to GoldenEye, where you withhold the main Bond theme until the tank scene. You don't get a lot of the main Bond theme until the action sequence with Little Nelly. It's an hour and odd, hour and a quarter into the movie before you properly get the Bond theme. And so you can use that, and the movie uses that as the exciting, the score that, oh, great! And then You Only Live Twice is the gentle score which kind of flows through the more quiet scenes. And it's really great. It's absolutely brilliant.
You should give up smoking. Cigarettes are very bad for your chest.
Mr. Osato believes in a healthy chest.
Really?
Up to this point, every Bond film had been making more and more money than the previous one. And this was the first Bond film that stopped that trend and went under. As we were saying earlier, maybe it's too much fucking spy crap was coming out. But not just spy crap, particularly Bond rip-off spy crap. Our Man Flint, you've got spoofs. 2-3 months earlier, fucking Casino Royale came out, which was one of the worst films ever. And so I do feel sorry for this movie. It's weird to feel sorry for a movie. I think this is a really good Bond movie that was let down by the fact that there was just oversaturation in the market at the time.
I love the way he's disappointed here. It's like something out of a sort of Steve Coogan comedy.
Yes, it's like in The Office when in the Christmas special he goes,
she said to be wearing a white chiffon scarf to help me spot her. So, oh, for fuck's sake.
Sean Connery definitely didn't want to do this. He was falling out with the producers, I think, because it was making so much money. I think he thought he was above the role at this point, and he also felt he deserved a bigger slice of the pie.
But I could see why you might get bored of it, of doing the same thing for 5 years in a row. Look, if you were in a job for 5 years, you get bored of it. I've been in my fucking job for 8 years. I'm sick to the back teeth of it.
I don't know, great. I've only read 2 of the books, 1.5 of the books.
There was one cutting I read about you. It said you were relaxed and informal to the point of falling apart.
Yes, that's true, times. Particularly when I'm drunk.
Within a few years, we've gone into parody. Carry On Spying has already come out.
00. Oh. Oh, what? I have no idea. They looked at me and they said, uh-oh. Oh.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And it's becoming a joke already. So you could see why you might be bored. You can certainly see on screen that he looks bored.
This is him rolling his eyes at everything. I think, though, that he's great in these first 5 films. I think he's great in all of them. I still like him in this, despite the fact that he looks kind of fed up.
Sean Connery has a presence, screen presence. Even if he's reading the fucking phone book, he would have that presence.
He's sort of the opposite of Pierce Brosnan. In GoldenEye, he looks a little tense, and he's a little bit more neat. And as the films go on, he gets more and more relaxed. And it is Pierce Brosnan loving the fact he's James Bond.
Yeah.
Sean Connery hates being James Bond by the end of his films. But I don't think it ruins his performance. I still think he's good in it.
You said you weren't living up to your image.
Well,
Perhaps you weren't grabbing girls in bars, perhaps.
would they pay the fines if I lived up to the image?
One of the great things about this movie is after 4.5, 5 movies now, you've built the idea of Spectre as this international terrorist villainous organisation with Blofeld, #1, at the top, and you've been teased with little bits of him, and finally we get him. It feels brilliant. It feels really momentous that he's just appeared out of nowhere. Donald Pleasance, who he's not my favourite, I don't think.
He's mine.
He is the quintessential Blofeld. He's the madman. He's a psychotic supervillain. Quietly spoken, dangerous madman with a plan to take over the world. And it's Donald Pleasance, who's a fantastic actor. It could be a nonsense because he's a man stroking a cat in a fucking volcano base. On the page, that sounds like bollocks. But Donald Pleasance, I think, makes it a quietly believable, dangerous villain. He's brilliant.
When he leans in and he's bald and has that scar and the makeup is fantastic, it's an instantly striking image with Donald Pleasance's charisma behind it as well. Again, we finally see Blofeld and they pay it off.
The firing power inside my crater is enough to annihilate a small army. You can watch it all on TV.
The one problem with Roald Dahl's script, he had this whole idea where there were 3 types of women you needed to have in a Bond film. A love interest, who dies, a femme fatale, and the main Bond girl. This rigid structure that he's given himself, I think is actually one of the few detriments to the movie. Akiko Wakabayashi plays Aki. He's introduced early on in the movie. They have this nice chemistry throughout. And she is, I think, pretty great throughout the whole movie. And then she's murdered. And she's been the character for an hour and 10 minutes or something. And he kills the murderer. And then they just introduce another girl that he has sex with. And it's actually kind of upsetting. It puts you off Bond that he's gotten over the idea that this woman's dead and he just wants to fuck someone else. And it doesn't help that the second character, Kissy Suzuki, which is called in the credits, she's not even named in the movie, the second character. Then there's never a moment where a name is spoken. She turns up, she marries him, and then she's just there. Why do they have to have a wedding? There's no reason for this. You gotta have a wedding. Just pretend you're a fisherman.
For whose benefit is that wedding for?
You said as well, like, when the action set piece happens and finally, you know, Kissy Suzuki's coming down on the rope as well, it would be so much more impactful if this was the character we were introduced to 50 minutes ago rather than someone 12 minutes ago.
It didn't need to be two characters, yeah. It was a shagging quota. It was a sex scene quota. Because she dies in that poison scene, which is quite ingenious. But you could still have that scene and Bond just wake up and see the poison, and you don't need a death there. So yes, it is a real shame.
It pours on his cheek.
In his eye. Oh God, no. What's that?
You gave false name to priest.
Yes, but we must keep up appearances. We're on our honeymoon.
What's really interesting is neither of them spoke English when they started. And they were flown over to England to live with English families and talk to the children of probably some arseholes in the countryside. And apparently neither of them picked up very much English in 3 months. Just as if I was flown to fucking Japan, 3 months.
Well, of course you wouldn't. In fucking 12 weeks. What?
They were originally meant to be in separate roles. So they were, you know, it was going to be other way around. Apparently Mee Hammer really didn't pick up anything. And it got to the point where they said, we can't use her. Not only does she not understand me when I talk, when she talks it's gibberish. So they said, I'm afraid we're going to have to let you go and pick someone else. And she threatened to throw herself out the window of the Dorchester Hotel. And they went, no, we'll figure something out.
Darling, I give you very best duck.
Well, that'd be lovely.
A great thing is that the woman who's the, I guess, fake seductress who, you know, leads to his death, she reappears in Casino Royale. She's one of the people at the gambling table.
Houston, this is Hawaii. We have an unidentified object on scope.
Towards the end of the movie, we have Shane Rimmer is working for NASA, and he's on a little TV. And Shane Rimmer is the voice of the main Thunderbird, whose name escapes me.
Scott Tracy, I think.
He was in 2 other Bond films. He was in Diamonds Are Forever and The Spy Who Loved Me. But what's fascinating is in this, he's doing the kind of countdown going like,
I repeat, clothing fast in our vehicle.
He plays exactly the same role in Batman Begins, where he's the guy who works in like the sewage plant or whatever.
Pressure's moving along the mains, blowing all the pipes. And if that pressure reaches us, the water supply right across the whole city is gonna blow.
He's blown up! The enemy! I repeat, the enemy is blown up!
The Rock's grandfather appears in the movie.
Hi, Chief Peter Maivia. It's such a good fight scene. There's such a physicality to it. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, but it feels so brutal and quick and nasty. I love it.
When the Russians launched their spacecraft, all the Russians are speaking Russian. which I really fucking appreciate.
Алло, Москва! Алло, Москва!
Иркутск к восходу 16-й.
Мы потеряли весь контакт по радио и также на экране.
Иркутск к восходу 16-й.
Which adds a sense of realism to a very over-the-top stupid sequence. I think if you had guys going, "They're stealing our space rocket," you'd go, not only is that accent terrible, it's even further away from reality.
A toy helicopter?
No, it's certainly not a toy.
It looks brilliant. It looks absolutely incredible. It's a sort of car chase sequence, but in the sky, in 3 dimensions. It's a completely new take on a car chase scene. And there's something about the fact that there's this little thing with a man in, instead of this big, you know, relatively large helicopter, which makes it so exciting. I don't know, it's just such a cool gadget. It just looks so fun as well.
And they filmed it beautifully. There's great shots of it flying around the volcano, and then there's a wonderful shot where it's flying along and you see the shadow of it along the rock face of the volcano. And then we cut back and there's all of a sudden some more shadows following it. I mean, this sequence is brilliantly filmed. The only negative thing to say about the scene is the fact that there was an accident. John Jordan, who was one of the cameramen in a helicopter, had part of his foot lopped off by the blades of a helicopter as he was filming.
Yeah, so he was like hanging from a helicopter with a camera, I think, was it, to get a shot, and then another helicopter came up. Either they were too low or it was too high, and his foot went into the rotor blades of the helicopter, and I think it was like almost entirely chopped off.
And then what's amazing is he came back for On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and it's part of the reason why the skiing sequences are so exciting is he was behind a lot of the aerial shots of that. Unfortunately, in 1973, while they were filming Catch-22, he fell out of a helicopter to his death while filming.
I remember once saying to him, "What does it feel like to be hanging there? Because you're just hanging in space." He said, "I feel like God."
One of the shots that I love in this movie is when the car is picked up with a magnet. The drop of the car goes on for so long that you keep thinking the car's going to hit the water, and it's just that little bit longer. The ninja school is at Himeji Castle. I was in Kyoto last year before everything went to shit. I took a bullet train there and the speed was unbelievable. When you go there, you're not allowed to wear your shoes, so you have to put your shoes in plastic shopping bags. So when you're walking around that castle, all you can see is people walking around with shopping plastic, and then it's a very odd atmosphere in that castle.
Is she pretty?
She has a face like a pig.
The girl I have chosen is an agent of mine. But first, you must become Japanese.
I love this film, and this is one of the big problems with it, is the James Bond is made to look like a Japanese person.
I mean, it hasn't aged well. Not even from a sense of it's massively racist, which you may well argue that it is. But just from the sense of it looks fucking stupid. It looks like this man with a bad wig, with some bad eye prosthetics on. I mean, it's awful.
It's doubly embarrassing that the people who are doing it are women in bras and panties. The whole thing, you go, oh, I wish this wasn't in there.
You will be a poor Japanese worker with humble Japanese wife at your side.
Yeah, with a face like a pig.
Only Live Twice as a title, in many other countries, that's a confusing thing to have. Like, what does that mean? It was called many other different things abroad, and these are the literal translations. In Japan, it was known as 007 Dies Twice.
Which he doesn't.
In Norway and Greece, it was known as James Bond in Japan. In Brazil and Portugal, it was known as With 007, You Only Live Twice.
A threat?
And in China, it was known as 007 Seized the Rocket Base. So anyway, that's...
Which he does.
That's something.
You only live twice, Mr. Bond.
So this is one of these weird films where I don't know how much of it is my nostalgia for it and how much of it is how good the film itself is. But this is a film that I really love. It's super fun. It glides along. It's a really fun blockbuster.